Hey, today we're continuing a series called Jesus the Life Changer. And listen, this is really the heartbeat of what we want to celebrate is real life pictures of how Jesus has changed us, how he's formed us, how he's reformed us, how he's taken broken parts of our life and rebuilt them and redeemed them, how he's taken places that the enemy has caused chaos and brought peace and stability and sanity out of those places. And our celebration of Christ in the picture of everyday people is something that is really hard for the enemy to counteract. He just can't argue with the story of what Jesus has done in somebody's life. And so today, for those of you that don't know, today's story is Cori Sprinkle. She is the newest daughter to our family. And you can hoot for that. And just take a look.
I'm Cori Sprinkle. I first came to Venture Church when I was in 6th grade. As I was growing up, I lived with my mom and my dad and my brother. My dad worked away from home. He worked far away, and he would come home every weekend, and we lived in a big house. When I was 6 years old, we moved to Texas, and it was the last day of kindergarten, and we packed our stuff up and took a U-Haul down to Texas. This was when things with my biological mom started going downhill. She started drinking a lot and smoking and trying to hide a lot of things from us. She was caught cheating on my dad with some man that she met there. She moved out of our apartment with us, became an alcoholic really, really quickly. I was 7 years old and didn't really know how all of that worked. I didn't even know what it was really. Her and my dad split up. And then a couple months later, my dad said that we were going back to North Carolina. So he took my brother and I, and we drove back to North Carolina where we stayed with my grandparents. And we left my biological mom there in Texas. She ended up following us back. And a few months later, they went to court and they ruled that she would have partial custody of us. She was still my mom. I still needed her in my life, I felt like. Colin, my brother, he didn't really want her in his life at all. One Tuesday, she forgot to pick us up from school. She just didn't show up, and we didn't really know why. We ended up going to my grandparents' house. And that night, my biological dad took me to her apartment and told me to get my stuff from her apartment and said, this is the last time you'll see her. Shortly after that, my dad said that he lost his job and we were moving to Columbia, South Carolina, to a small town called Blythewood. My biological dad started getting into different, he was coming home every night drunk and would drink all night. And we got evicted out of an apartment and 2 houses in Blythewood. So we ended up coming back to Concord and lived with my grandparents for a little while. One day I was we were waiting for my brother at his baseball practice, and my grandfather sat in the car with me, and he read me Bible verses and asked me if I wanted Jesus to be accepted, or I wanted to accept Jesus into my heart. And I said, yes, this is what I want. I repeated a prayer after him and accepted Jesus into my heart. He gave me a New Testament Bible that I still have, with the date in it that I was saved. And this was really my hope when things went really bad. We moved out of my grandparents' house, and for a little while, for a couple months, we stayed in a hotel in Charlotte. After that, we moved into a house in Harrisburg, me, my brother, and my dad, my biological dad. Things started to go downhill really quickly. things started to happen, like we would lose power and we would not have power for a really long time. We never had hot water. The water would be turned off every once in a while, and we would have to use the well outside for baths and showers, and for cooking. One day, my brother and I were in the house, and my biological dad was at work, and a policeman showed up at our front door and told us that we had a day to get out of the house because we were being evicted. From there, we moved into a hotel, and Colin started coming around less and less. He went to live with my grandparents for most of the time, and my biological dad and I stayed in hotels for months and months at a time. Things started getting really bad with Donnie, my biological dad. He started to take me to places and drop me off at stores and leave me there for a little while. He was a computer programmer, and he made more money than I knew, and I didn't know why we were still living paycheck to paycheck, why we were still living in a hotel. I didn't understand this, and he always told me that he had to go and pay people back, and so he would drop me off at a Walmart or stores and go and say, I'll come back and get you in a little while. I started to become more and more suspicious about what was happening. I realized that every time he picked me up, he was different, and that he always had to go to the bathroom after. Instead of him dropping me off at stores, I made him take me with him to where I didn't know at the time was drug deals. He would always tell me that we were paying someone back, and he would leave money in the door, and we would come back, and there would be drugs in the door. And at the time, I was too scared to confront him. I never said anything to him. I just acted like everything was fine and that he was just paying someone back. If I were to be suspicious at all of anything, he would yell at me and tell me that I didn't trust him and turn things around on me really quickly. One day, a man came and he said that he was borrowing his car. It was a friend of his was borrowing his car, and that he was going to bring it back. I didn't realize that this was his drug dealer. He ended up stealing his car. So we were stuck at an apartment, and this went on for like probably 2 or 3 months, where we were just stuck there. We would walk 2 miles to catch a bus every weekend to go to Walmart to buy groceries and then come back. We ended up getting evicted from this apartment and moving back into a hotel. The summer after 7th grade, Donnie moved to Fort Myers, Florida, where he got a new job there. I began playing softball, and my coach was Gary Imbler, and his family took me in during this time and let me live at their house during that summer. I went to Fort Myers, Florida. I flew by myself every other weekend to see Donnie and to spend the week with him. He would work during the days where I stayed at a hotel, and then he would come home at night, and everything was pretty good during the times that I was there until I would have to leave. He was very lonely and told me that he was lonely, and I understood, but I didn't know how I was supposed to help him. He wanted me to move down there, and I didn't want to at all. One day I was there in Fort Myers, and he came back to the hotel and said, we're leaving, we're going back to Harrisburg. So we came back, and we lived in a hotel for a really long time. During this time, I went to Venture a lot more. I started going to MSM at Derek and Becky's house. I started going to church every Sunday, whether he came with me or not. I went to a camp called Snowbird, and my leader was Sammy Jo, and she was really was nice to me and made me feel welcome at Venture. Around this time, I met Megan, and I was invited to a middle school girls sleepover at the Henderson's house. This was the first time that I went to the Henderson's house, and I knew of Pastor David, and I knew that their house was really nice and that they had a big family and that they adopted and that their family was perfect and everything that anyone would ever want. That night at the sleepover, me and Megan talked until 3 o'clock in the morning. She shortly after that became my best friend. We did everything together. When things were bad at my house, she would come pick me up and I would spend the night at their house. I started spending the night at their house all the time. This was really difficult for Donnie because he lived on the fact that I needed him, and he always told me, whenever you don't need me anymore is when I won't be here anymore. One night I was leaving the Henderson's house and Donnie was there to pick me up. It was really late and I came upstairs and who was then to me, Mr. David, gave me a hug and said, "I would adopt you in a heartbeat." I didn't really understand why he said this to me. I didn't feel like I needed someone to adopt me. I thought that my life was normal and that nothing was wrong. Shortly after that, we were kicked out of this house as well, and at the time, the Hendersons were in Africa. I didn't really know where to go. Donnie wanted to live with my grandparents, and they said, "No, we're not doing this again," because they've done it so many times that they couldn't do it anymore. And so Donnie went to live in his van, and I went to live at Derek and Becky Bartlett's house. Shortly after that, I moved in with Hendersons. They got partial custody of me a couple months after I started living with them. They met up with my biological dad and mom and made them sign papers that said that I was half theirs and half the Hendersons. This was really, really tough for Donnie. He always told me that he didn't have a purpose because I didn't need him anymore, and that always made me feel like it was all my fault. My mom and dad now ended up finding and reading the text messages on my phone from my biological dad that he had been sending me for months that were extremely verbally abusive. Soon after that, I began not making the best decisions with who I was hanging out with and who I was talking to. I began being on my phone 24/7 and never really interacted with the family at all, never really was loving them and showing them that I was a part of their family. I was really, really distant, and Dad began to realize this, but really the person who saw it the most was Megan. She told my dad some of the things that were happening with me, and he took my phone, and I didn't have a phone for 3 months, which was really the best thing possible for myself. Spent a lot of time to myself in my room, reading the Bible, learning more about Jesus, and asking questions. And this is when I truly began to feel Jesus' love and a relationship with him and know truly what that looked like. Without Jesus, I would not know what true love was. I would not know what a family was like, and I would be alone. Because Jesus had a plan for my life, I now know that I am never alone, that I am loved, and that is true love, and that I will always have a family. Jesus really is the life changer.
You guys welcome Cori to the stage. Let's do this again. All right? Yeah, there's a few more people here in the second service, right? Thanks for coming up. So take us back to, almost 18 months ago now, around Thanksgiving. It's the time where, we kind of got in charge that week. The judge signed papers that kind of allowed us to function as mom and dad and family. And at the same time, we were going out of town for Thanksgiving, but you decided you would rather stay at your grandparents for Thanksgiving. So tell us, like, what happened.
Yeah, so I think you guys went to Tennessee, and I decided that I wanted to spend Thanksgiving with my biological family and really with Colin. And on Thanksgiving Day, we ate lunch as a family, and then my grandpa came up and said, "Hey, Cori, do you want to take lunch to your dad?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds good." So we both knew that he was staying in a van in the Walmart parking lot, so we brought him a plate of food, and this was like really tough for me to see him like this. But on the way back, my grandpa and me were talking, and we had never really talked about like the reality of how my life was and like what actually happened. We had never really talked about it, so we were talking a little bit, and I was just explaining to him that I didn't really understand why everything that happened the way that it happened. And he went on to tell me that Donnie had been addicted to cocaine since he was 18 years old. This was really tough for me to understand, and I kind of felt like I had been lied to like a lot of my life, but it also answered a lot of questions and helped everything make a lot more sense in my life and why everything happened the way it did. So, yeah.
It kind of filled in a lot of gaps where in your mind as a little girl, like, why is this the way it is? And all the way through growing up. And so while that's tough to hear, at the same time, like you felt something there that said, okay, this makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah, and helped me understand that, it was kind of Donnie's fault, but at the same time, something had taken over him, and that it was a sickness that he was a part of, and that it wasn't really anything that he could have done at that point to make it better.
Yeah. So in some ways, as tough as that was to hear, it's also given you a little bit of compassion for people that are just trapped in addictions and still trying to figure out how help works right now. Yeah. So let's talk about your biological mom, Pam, for a little bit, because at the age of 6, 7, 7, then you hadn't seen her. And a few months after that Thanksgiving, we were communicating with her through the custody situation, and you decided that she really wanted to meet.
Yeah, so I know Mom had been talking to her a lot and had told me that she was getting better and that she went to Alcoholics Anonymous classes and that she had found Jesus, and that gave me a lot of peace. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, she's okay, because I hadn't talked to her in 9 years, and she said that she wanted to have dinner with us. So I, after a lot of talks with you about really what forgiveness meant, I knew that she had worked really hard to gain my forgiveness, and that's really what she wanted. And I didn't really know what this looked like, but after talking to you a lot about what forgiveness was and what that looked like, I decided to forgive her in my heart as well, and went to dinner with her, and that was really good.
Yeah. So let's talk about forgiveness. Like, we had a long talks. Reading passage after passage, like we forgive because God has forgiven us. And it's out of that pool of forgiveness that we draw from to forgive those that have just taken away parts of our life. And so we had met for dinner. You nervous? You were really nervous.
Yeah, I hadn't seen her in a really long time. I didn't really even know who she was, honestly. So yeah, I was super nervous.
So what was it like?
It was like, at the beginning, it was like a lot of small talk. We just talked about, who I was and what I did and sports and stuff. And then I remember before, Mom, you asked me if there was anything specific that I wanted them to ask her, because they knew it would be hard for me to ask the hard questions, and they're pretty good at that. So, so I told Mom that I wanted her to ask my biological mom if she had known about the things that Donnie had been doing for so much of his life, and if she had ever done those things with him, and if that was just a normal thing for them. So at the end, Pam asked if there was any questions that I had, and Mom asked this, and I just remember she just started crying, and I started crying, and this was whenever it got kind of real, because the whole dinner was kind of just like small talk and nothing really deep. But then that's when she just broke down, and she said, "I'm so sorry for missing all of your life and the things," and she said that she didn't know about the things Donnie was doing, that she didn't do them with him, and that made everything make a lot more sense, kind of.
So you get at least the truth of the picture, and you're not wondering. Yeah. So, like, in the midst of all this, Jesus. So, back when you're waiting for your brother to get done with a practice, your grandfather shares Jesus with you. Tell us a little bit more there.
Yeah, so I had grown up going to churches, and I always knew that, that's just what you did. You go to church on Sunday, and my grandparents were always church every single Sunday, but I didn't really know what a relationship with Jesus looked like. And even after this, I still had never really seen anyone truly pursue a relationship with Jesus, and so I still didn't know what that looked like. But I just remember after this, I knew that I wasn't alone, and that Jesus was always with me. I didn't know really how to have a relationship with him, but I just knew that in the hard times, the really, really hard times, I had someone there with me, and I could always read my Bible even if I didn't understand what it was saying. And I just knew that in the really tough times that he was always there for me.
And so you had accepted Jesus as your Savior at that point, but then you're still wrestling through chaos. And so you step into our family, and you find out real fast that we're not the perfect family. It might have taken a few hours for all the illusion to kind of fade away. Like the first time I yelled, is that when? Yeah, okay, it's like, whew, okay, here we go. Um, and but it's a weird dynamic because you'd never really had any rules.
Yeah.
Like,
I just did what I wanted.
just do whatever you want to do. And it's funny on our end, when you have somebody that you just want to care for, um, you don't want them running away, and so you just say, "Yeah, it's okay, whatever," and you give them a lot of space, and we gave you a lot of space. Um, Too much, yeah. See, yeah. For a few months, and then we start saying, "Okay, like." This is what it's like to have a mom. This is what it's like to have a dad. Here are the ground rules. Here we go. What was that like?
It was like the first time that I experienced like tough love. So it was like, you need to do this because we love you. It's not, we want the best for you. Like, I didn't realize that you guys wanted the best for me. And I didn't like having rules.
No rule? You
No.
liked having a phone with no rules, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And when we started pressing in, like you still had this option to tap out and be like, no, we have custody, but you got options. And so it got tough one night specific, and I just said, hey, like this is the ground rules here. If this is what your heart wants, we're all in, but I can't make you stay here. And you said,
Yeah, so you said, what do you want? And I said that I wanted to live with my biological dad again.
and I said,
You said, okay, we'll make that happen. And then walked
yeah,
out.
yeah, we'll make that happen. Because it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing about love that can't dominate. It's got to be offered, and it has to be received. And honestly, like that's what God's love is to each of you in this room. It is always offered, but it has to be received on your end. The transaction doesn't get complete. And if you don't receive it, it doesn't mean that God's not loving. Okay? It just means that the transaction's still on the table. And when you love people, like, this will happen. And I think somewhere in the church we got this idea that love's always supposed to work. Like work right and work right now. And I think the church is just needs to be so different. Like, no, our love keeps moving. It keeps pursuing. Even when it's rejected, or even when it's put aside, or even when it's pushed aside for a season. Like, it just keeps coming. Because that's the imitation of God. That's a love that's going to keep coming after us. And so we said that we'd make that happen. And man, I remember leaving your room that night. I was like, okay, God, like you got to do something. So what happened?
So that night, it was a couple hours later, I just knew that I had made a mistake. I didn't know why I said that. And I remember just sitting there. I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I walked out of my room and I yelled upstairs. I said, Dad, can you come talk? And you said, you can come up here and talk, which was kind of the first time that happened, because it was usually like you initiating conversation. So I was scared and I went upstairs and I just walked in and you were sitting on the couch and I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I really just, I don't know why I said that. I know that this is where God wants me to be. Whether it's what my heart wants right now or not, I know that that's what God wants for me.
Yeah. So that was like, Yeah, it's about 12, 13 months ago. And then, like, we still had this season where we just kind of, hey, let's hit a reset button and let's get all the chatter, let's cut it out. And what was that for you? Because I know, like, at that point, you made a real plan to dive into
Yeah.
the Bible, to dive into relationship with God.
I was kind of just like secluded. I didn't have any, like I had no phone. It was summer, so I didn't go to school. I just kind of sat in my room. Megan was in Ethiopia, so I was just lost kind of. I sat in my room and I had a Bible plan that I had written down from Megan's phone before she had left. And I just worked my way through Esther, and I just remember asking you questions all the time just about what things meant, and that was like the first time I had sat down and like really read a Bible plan and read my Bible every single day for a lot of days that whole summer, and that was just the first time I had really pursued a relationship with Jesus and like saw what that meant, because I had seen Megan do that and I had seen you do that, and so like I really knew what it meant to do that, and so I started doing that for myself.
Yeah, so what's family been like since then? Like brothers and sisters?
Yeah, so I started like kind of letting them know that I'm not going anywhere kind of, and loving them, and they love me more than I probably show love to them, and so I've just been so blessed with
You're doing good.
my brothers and sisters.
Some of them are pretty hard to love, I'll be honest with you. I'm just messing.
They've accepted.
It's good. It's like when you see kids who have not been brother and sister. For me, like I got a picture of you in preschool with Jacob, the same preschool. And when you see like you guys acting like real brother and sister, like hitting on each other and like literally hitting on each other. It's good. It's good. So here's what I want to push out to you guys today. And it's just a statement that you got to get a hold of, and you got to figure out how does God want to use this statement in your life. And it's this: every child is one caring adult away from being a success story. All right? Every child, one caring adult away from being a success story. You've had a lot of caring adults. Not just one, a lot. So tell me about some of them.
Yeah, so I had a lot of coaches mostly that were more than just coaches to me. They probably didn't realize it, but they cared for me in ways that they don't even know, and were always there for me, and they were just some of the consistent people in my life because I didn't really have that many, and
Yeah. Couple of those coaches here. Yeah. Can you stand up just for a second? Seriously, like, come on. Yeah. You guys are awesome. Yep. I look at a lot of those coaches and I'm like we wouldn't be here without some of you guys at different seasons before I even knew who Cori was. You had a softball coach in 7th grade, Gary Embler, Gary and Kelly. They're a great family in our community. They don't go to church here yet. Just kidding. I've been working on them. They're hard. No, they go to another church. They're in great shape. But he was softball coach, 7th grade.
Yeah, so he, I played baseball, and he was more than just a coach. He loved all of my team so well, and just really it wasn't just softball for him. It was more than softball, and it was more of just loving us so well. And he accepted me into his home and kind of showed me a little bit of what family was like, and I got to see that a little bit because I didn't really know what that was, and so
Yeah, guys, these are people that just, they like sports, they love the game, and they love to compete, but they don't just end there. That's like the tool, that's like the atmosphere that gives us an excuse to get into a relationship and a friendship, to be able to say some important things at some important times to people and make a gigantic difference in a kid's life. Because you don't know, when you're a coach, you kind of get a little picture sometimes, but you really don't know what's going on until you dig a little bit more and you ask a little bit more. It's one of the reasons why I love coaching, because I know this is true. And if sports will give me an excuse to be that caring adult in that kid's world, then I'll take that. And I'm grateful for a lot of you in this room that have done just that and continue to do it, like year after year after year, in amazing ways. There's a whole book in the Bible. It's called Proverbs. It's kind of right there in the middle. And here's the thing that I want to push out to everybody today is, like, the book of Proverbs is just like what wisdom saying. And honestly, it really is. Like, it's a caring adult, caring enough to write this stuff down, hopefully so that a younger version of himself will learn from it and not have to learn it the hard way. And even when that younger version of himself is too stubborn and has to learn it the hard way, then it's still there. And it's like, oh yeah, if I just read that a few years ago, if I just learned that a few years ago. I think about Donnie, I think about Pam, I think, like, what if there was a caring adult when Donnie was 18 years old? What if there, because I know, here's the other thing, is sometimes that caring adult, we need another person, another adult in every kid's life saying the same thing that their parent was saying. Because I'm confident your grandparents were saying the right things. Okay? But sometimes it takes another adult saying the same thing. And what if that was the case? We've got to be this. And this book of Proverbs is just, it reads like, again, it's a guy he's lived some tough life. And he's writing back to a younger version of himself. And he's saying this: my child, never forget the things that I've taught you. Store my commands in your heart. If you do this, you'll live many years and your life will be satisfying. He says things like, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He'll show you which path to take. Listen, he's not writing a memory verse for some kid to memorize. And some of you have memorized that verse. He's saying, hey, trust in the Lord with all your heart, because I know what it's like, and I know the path to go down when you don't trust in the Lord. And don't depend on your own understanding of things, because I remember when I thought I knew it all. And some of you guys, you think you know it all. Middle schoolers, I know you're in here. Thanks for enduring. I know you think you know it all. Some of you high schoolers in here, man, you've got the world licked. And you know what you want to do, and you know what you want to be, and it's all about you and making your own decisions and telling everybody else, even though you know their voices speak truth, and you just say, forget it. I don't care. Because I don't want to listen to you, because I don't want to do it. And I mean, there are older voices in this room that will say, hey, don't depend on your own understanding. Like, get somebody else's perspective. Seek God's will in all you do. And if you do that, He'll show you what path to take. And I mean, I could take you to people in this room right now to say, hey, like, if you don't do that, like, there's trouble ahead. And that's part of these stories is trying to save some people from making some same decisions. But he writes, he says, my child, don't reject the Lord's discipline. And don't be upset when He corrects you. For the Lord corrects those He loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom He delights. It's not fun. It's not fun to be the father always either. My child, don't lose sight of common sense and discernment. Hang on to them, for they will refresh your soul. They're like jewels on a necklace. They keep you safe on the way, and your feet will not stumble. Like this is a whole book that says, hey, like, think about it. You can save yourself some trouble. I can say this for this church. If it weren't for student ministry, this church, student ministry, like, I wouldn't have Cori as a daughter in our family. I can like confidently say that. Like, you came here in 6th grade and you had a small group leader, Sammy Joe. Yeah. And so, like, she was small group leader back here in MSM, just leading your small group. Large group time, and then y'all break up and y'all talk there. But then camp.
Yeah,
Snowbird. All right. Like when we go to Snowbird, we always go to Snowbird. All right. But it's not just camp, because it's the excuse to kind of push everything out, and that's where you really got to know her a lot better, right?
Yeah, we started hanging out after that.
And then that brings more meaning to every time after that. And then Megan was middle school leader.
In 7th grade.
7th grade. And that started the connection of just, first of all, it was just our house being a safe place and being a refuge. And then kind of keeps growing from there. But Derek and Becky were just huge. I mean, I remember you telling me YCI, you go to YCI at middle school, and what, Derek was leading?
Derek would be like, Cori, come to church on Sunday. Cori, come to church all the time. So that made me, he held me accountable a lot. It was like, wanted me to be there and stuff.
Yeah. Guys, we have been better at this in the past than we are right now, okay? And so today I need something to change, all right? And it's going to require a change in you guys. Because at one point, we were a lot better at having small group leaders for all of our kids, every grade, okay? Children's ministry, we do 2 services. We got a big enough space here to not do 2 services, okay? We do 2 services, and honestly, we don't even do 2 services because some of you like coming early and some of you like sleeping in, okay? We do 2 services for one reason. Because we believe it's vitally important for the kids and the students in their own atmospheres to have the same face teaching them, leading them. So that you can come to one service and then you can be that adult in the other service. And I know, like, you might just be waking up to that. Oh, we even have 2 services. Yeah, we have 2 services, okay? Something happens before you got here, okay? And honestly, for some of you, like, not for some of you, like, we got to be this. And it's going to take a lot of you saying, you know what, I'll be here at 9:15 for the 9:30. No, I'll be here at 8:45 for the 9 o'clock, all right? And I'll be that adult in that small group. And you know, we really want small group leaders that will step in honestly, at 6th grade. I'd love a 7-year commitment. Because this is what happens. Like 6th grade, like you any adult who cares is pretty decent to a 6th grader, okay? 7th grade, you need to get them in 6th grade though, because 7th graders, just ignore this for a second. 7th grade is a disaster, okay? Of epic proportion. And I know you don't feel like you changed that much. You do, okay? And we need an adult that knew you when you were fun and kind in 6th grade. And will endure through a year of 7th grade and see you in 8th grade when you're emerging as a decent person. I'm just kidding, sorry. I was 7th grade. I would have hated to lead me in 7th grade. I mean, when you go home to my church, everybody loves me. It's like, oh, I taught him in 3rd grade. Oh, he was great in 5th grade. But then you talk to like the 7th grade Sunday school teacher, and they're like, what? He's a pastor? Like, are you kidding me? Let me tell you some story. You know, anyway. This is where it gets even serious, okay? A 9th and 10th grader, they don't need a new adult in their ear. They need somebody they know they can count on because they've been here in 6th and 7th and 8th grade and they're not going anywhere. And so we got to do this, okay? So I need you to step up to that. I need you to sit in a service. I need you to serve during a service because I don't need spots filled, okay? I need adults. I need adult in a kid's life, a caring adult, because every child is one caring adult away from being a success story. And you got to be that adult. And we've got adults in this room that are that way, all right? I mean, honestly, guys, this student ministry is ridiculous, and it is phenomenal. And you guys are fortunate because you guys got some great leaders. But we need a lot more. Because let me tell you, this is a good-sized student ministry, honestly. I mean, we have a student ministry here that tons of churches would love to have, and they call us and ask us about it all the time. But there's 1,800 students that come here every day. And more on the way. I mean, I don't know how many is over in the middle school, but there's over 1,000. And we're building new schools all the time because, like, the need is gigantic. And we're not about just taking care of our kids. If you've been here any time, you know this about us. Like, I'm not about, like, making sure that we just serve this little group, you know, us four and no more. We are getting close, guys, but it's going to take all of us. Listen, I want to be able to say we will not tolerate aloneness in Harrisburg. It's just not acceptable. We're not, and listen, and that's going to take small group leaders in every grade, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 6th, 10th, 12th. It's going to take that. But listen, it's going to take teachers. I mean, tons of you are teachers in here. And you see it, you know it. And man, I pray for you guys because like just keep in there, summer's coming. You know, but seriously, like you see it and you're like, like you can do what you can do. And we got to be a church that says, hey, when you see it, you got to know that we're coming with you. What can we do to help you? Young life leaders that are here in this room, like school counselors. I mean, it's just everybody. Coaches, like, man, if you coach a team, if you don't, then coach a team. Like, you don't have to be good at coach. You don't even have to know the sport to coach. Trust me. Trust me. But something happens. Something happens. I mean, Ian coaches soccer. Sorry. I coach football. I love it. But listen, I love it more because, like, there's some of you seniors here that still give me the time of day because I coached you in 7th and 8th grade and you owe me. Right? But there's something that happens there, you know, and you got to be there. We got to be this, okay? The world's moving here, if you didn't realize that. Harrisburg's a really hot place to be. And there are families coming by the droves. And those are not all nice, little, perfect, healthy families. They're full of kids, and some kids are right on the brink of disaster. Some parents are right on the brink of splitting up. And what are we going to be? I mean, some of you are here because your kid went to a YCI. You didn't even know what YCI was. You just knew some neighbor was picking them up because they're friends, and you didn't even know who that, and they're just getting to school early, and you got them out there. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, now my kid wants to come to church, so I guess I'll check this thing out. And now you're here. And guys, like, this is hope. And this is help. And this is real life. And this is what Jesus wants to do in life after life after life. We don't gloss over in our family the brokenness that makes our family actually a family. It's weird to be in the situation of it wasn't supposed to be this way. But it is. And also be really grateful for what it is. And so, you know, I tell Cori, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be sad for what's lost. But this is part of this journey where God wants to redeem and bring beauty out of ashes. And we're not going to allow the enemy to win with our kids. Like, not on our watch. Not in this town. I'm going to pray for us, and band's going to close with a song. And it's a song that I'm like, the lyrics are too good. And it's two voices. And one of the voices is the child. One of the voices is the child that's desperate. And the voice in this song says, I'm hanging on by a thread. All I'm clinging to is prayers. Every breath is like a battle. That's all I got. I hear death knocking, pain creeping, fears crawling, like it's chaos. And then there's another voice. And there's this adult voice. And this is the voice that I need some of you to start stepping into. Because that adult voice says to that kid, hey, just fight a little longer. It's all worth it. It'll be worth it. Keep fighting. But when you've got nobody to turn to, just hold on, because I'll find you. I'll find you. Guys, we've got to be the church that'll go and find you. Because this is happening every day. Every day. And God wants us to be this place. Wants us to be these people. Wants us to be the adults that'll say, hey, not on my watch. I'm going to come find you. Just hold on. Hold on. And I'll find you. Let me pray for us. God, I'm so grateful for Cori. I'm grateful for every plan and every purpose. Where the enemy has acted, you have redeemed. I pray, Lord, for every child that's in a tough situation, every child in this room that feels like, man, I am barely hanging on. And I pray, Father, that we would be the place that says, hang on, because we're coming for you.